Okay, welcome to another episode of Email Beyond Revenue. I'm really excited to welcome one of the original legends of the e-commerce space today, Drew Sanocki, who is the CEO of PostPilot. As I was saying just before the call, Drew, feels like I've known you for years, but this is actually our first time speaking, and I'm really excited for you to dive in and share a lifecycle marketing strategy, especially given this is one thing that you've become really well known for over the years. So without further ado, feel free to take it away from here.
Awesome, Adam. It's great to finally meet you. And I think that when you talk legends, it's like Jeff Bezos and me, right? It's like, I don't know he's probably a little bit better known.
He's close again for sure. Yeah, he's getting there. I'll be there myself one day, a few more years.
Great. Well, I'm excited to be here. And I tried to really think tactically about how to get some quick wins, in my case, using direct mail, but how to sync it with your email strategy. We have this strategy we recommend to a lot of our brands called the Echo strategy. And it basically is a problem we see in a lot of brands. My background, as you know, Adam, is in running brands, mostly turnarounds. I've run three big ones: Karmaloop, Auto Anything, and Overtone. And in each case, I'd get into these businesses, they're like 100 million in revenue, losing 10 is typical. And I'd salivate because I'd see like 5 million people on the email list. And then you go look at, that's more than the emails, maybe 5 million people, previous buyers. So customers of the business. And as a marketer, this is my best audience. It's all I want to do is talk to these guys. And then you drill down and you're like, oh, wait a minute. Only a small percentage of those are subscribed. And then if I look at the people who are actually opening my emails, it's often like 10% of a very rich audience. So you've got, in many cases, here's one where I made two segments in Klaviyo, one of all my previous buyers, anyone who's ordered from me. And then how many of those people are opening an email in like 60 or 90 days? And you see it's like 10%. So what that tells me as a marketer, like that's such a rich audience. Like the first time you want to market to previous buyers, right? It's so much cheaper than going and prospecting new customers. But my big realization was that in many of these brands that I ran, like most of the customers aren't hearing from me. And I came to the conclusion that like the single biggest leverage point for me as a marketer was going after, extending what's working for the 10% in email and extending it to the other 90%. And, not to bury the lead, but the way to do that is direct mail, right? Like, because in direct mail, you don't always need the opt-in, from the customer. You can send a direct piece of direct mail to anybody. So, including people who aren't, who might have bought from your brand aren't even online, right? Or they're always going to opt. There's no opt-in required. There's just great stats around direct mail. Mostly, 90% of what you send out is going to get opened and looked at. If people, unlike email, people put a piece of direct mail like on a coffee table or in the bathroom, and they look through it for an extended period of time. We see really long attribution windows. Great response. One thing when I think of direct mail, I think of it's like it's email, but with a much bigger and better response rate. Mm-hmm. But obviously, it costs a little bit more to send, but the response rates for any campaign are going to be higher than the same campaign in email. So the email echo strategy is like basically you're take your winners for that 10% that are opening your emails and just echo them, just clone them into direct mail. So I was going to do a little demo here of did that come up? Let me try to bump the size down a little there. So this is a nine-figure brand in the US, Hexclad. Basically, they've got, I want you to zero in right here. They're targeting last order date, 90 days, and number of purchases is 1. So this is like what they've got probably going in their Klaviyo, is, hey, this is somebody who ordered from me once and hasn't been back in in 90 days, I'm going to give them another offer, right? It's could be a cross sell, could be an upsell. And as we discussed at the beginning, they're not hitting everybody through email. So they just took the same offer, the same discount. I think in this case was like 10% off, flipped it into into direct mail. And it's pretty, intuitive up here. It's like you see great returns, right? Like they spent about $1,000 and they're getting 25K off of it. And so that's all, it's all automated. And you think of like, if you've had an experience with direct mail in the past, it's often, you've got to go find a printer, you send a campaign, you come back in 6 months to see how it did. I think now modern direct mail platforms like PostPilot allow you to tee it up just like a Klaviyo flow. You can even within Klaviyo drag basically drag the the postcard to the end of an existing flow. So you could do, if you think of, this is from another brand, Jones Road Beauty, they've got in this case, an abandoned cart. Email reminder goes out day 0, day 1, maybe they give 10% off, day 3, they give 20% off. And if the customer hasn't replied or responded to any of those, boom, then you can launch a postcard, right? You sort of save the bazooka to the end, and it works really well. So that's like the email echo strategy. We recommend all of our clients start there because the ROIs are there. Like if it's returning if it gives you a great return in email, it's going to give you a great return in direct mail. And so whenever you have the customer data, any of these kind of Klaviyo or whatever your ESP is, any of these will pivot really well to direct mail. So think post-purchase, cross sells, an abandoned carts, win backs. You could do VIP, campaigns, sort of like rewarding VIPs, or you could even do your promotional or one-off campaigns. So these are like Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, Black Friday. Again, if it's working in email, all you're really doing is using the same exact segment for that Klaviyo flow, pivoting it into direct mail, and you're going to see a great result. You've just moved from getting 10% to 90% of that segment. So I went through that pretty quickly, but high level, that's my pick is where you'd want to start.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. And I think what I like about this is there's not much friction to getting started. And we can talk a little bit about the process and how quickly it is to deploy this. Because one of the things that I've heard through like the pushback when I pitch this to clients, especially explaining, the natural churn over email and the disengagement rate is, well, this is going to consume resources. It's going to take a lot of time. We don't want to add more channels onto the mix. And my obviously pitch to them is, well, it's like you said, as close to low hanging fruit as possible. Just because they've churned over email doesn't mean that they're not interested in what we have to say anymore. So tell me a little bit about how quickly somebody could get started with this as a strategy.
Sure. I mean, obviously they work with an agency like yours and you can just plug in, but you add the app to your stack, shop, whatever you're using, Shopify, Klaviyo, plays nice with a lot of basically everything you've got in your stack. All these things are sending data into the platform that you can then use to target campaigns. Here's another one. So, in this case, you could see the creative, which I don't think was loading on the other example I had loaded up. But, the first step is add the app. That's free, very easy to do. Second step is to design the campaign. And that's where, in our case, we've got like an internal concierge team that will do it for you. We've got a design team that can design the card, or we work with an agency like yours and either you guys do it or you work with us to deploy that. So it's pretty easy. That was our goal, was to be able to get up and running for a brand within a week. And again, the sweet spot to start is often in those automated campaigns.
Yep, absolutely. And I know we've talked a bit about win-back campaigns, but you did show a couple of other use cases as well. Tell me about some of the other areas to deploy direct mail, because I know obviously they do work well for win-backs, and that's the first thing that people think about. but there is other automations and specific campaign types as well. Would love to just spend a little bit of time just talking through those.
Sure. I thought I had a slide on it, but I don't. It's, as a marketer, you've got retention and retargeting and prospecting or acquisition. That's kind of how I think about it. Direct mail is kind of unique because it goes in all of them. So I think of like on the retention side, it's very similar to email. If you find a successful flow or however you'd use email, you can flip it in direct. You'd use direct mail the same way. Retargeting and prospecting, it's a lot more like meta. So that's when for retargeting, you put a pixel on your site, you can correlate, or we can correlate for you 60, 70% of your cold traffic to a physical address, and then drop a piece of print collateral, like a catalog or something. You put filters on that and say, like, I only want to drop this to people who've been on my site 5 times or 5 minutes or something. That works really well as high intent prospecting. And then true acquisition is what everybody's really after, right? As much as I bang the table on retention. And there it's, it's just like a lookalike. So we can do a lookalike off your best customers, develop a whole new audience that you can prospect to. You can also layer direct mail attributes on top of that, like household income and distance from a Whole Foods or a Target or something like that. And that's how prospecting works. We do it on a rolling basis. You set a budget, you set a target ROAS, and let the system kind of optimize for you.
I'm fascinated to potentially bring you back to do another episodes of this, because I feel as though we're going to go down a rabbit hole of holdout tests, incrementality, loads of different interests.
It's all in app. And I think that's something that's a little bit different from all the other channels. And every other channel, you basically can have a click to the site where, you do attribution off last click or something. But direct mail, you don't, and a lot of people say, well, I'm going to put a QR code on there or a coupon code. That certainly helps, but keep in mind that probably we see only like 10% of people scanning a QR code or even redeeming coupons, surprisingly enough. And like the gold standard on how to do it is a control group, right? So, whenever you build out a campaign, 90% of the people in that segment will get the direct mail campaign, 10% will not. Both groups see your meta ads, both groups see your emails, billboards, whatever. The only thing you can attribute the lift to is the direct mail. So that's how we calculate our incrementality.
Yep, that's fantastic. And I think the essence of what you've spoke about today, and what my hope is, that people just simply see direct mail as another touch point. When I have a lot of discussions with brands, there's this weird anomalous belief that it's like this old archaic strategy, or it's something that needs to be considered at the end once we've tried, the conventional channels like email or SMS. But for me, this is just another touch point to meet people depending on their engagement at any part of the customer journey. It doesn't necessarily just have to be, for win back campaigns when they're close to churning. I would recommend everyone just to strategically weave this into, to the common use cases, whether it's campaigns, prospecting, win backs, flows. This is just something that could be everywhere within a marketing strategy.
100%. I mean, I think if I were starting a new store today, I would still start with the low hanging fruit. I'd be leaning in on email and meta, or Instagram or something like that. But as soon as I get to that, if I'm $1 million in revenue, $3 million in revenue and up, it's going to be one of your top 3 channels. So I would say you got to diversify your marketing off of just one of those. You build a more resilient business, and it's more predictable because the cost doesn't really increase. So, whatever you pay for customer acquisition this week will largely be the same as what you're going to pay over Black Friday, which is a nice to have, So, yeah, I think it's essential.
Well, this has been super practical, Drew, as I expected from you. But how can people get started? I know you obviously covered this earlier on, but what's the next logical step for someone who's seeing this and wants to get started?
Yeah, I've got that here. I mean, you can go to postpilot.com/meet, set up a call with one of our strategists. You can just shoot me an email and ask me if you think it'll be a good fit. I'll tell you. I'm Drew at postpilot.com. So I'd say one of those two ways.
Yeah, and for anyone listening, as we talked about before the call, there is a fantastic team of PostPilot. If anyone has any aversion to getting started because they think, this is going to take days or weeks to set up, my experience has actually been this is very rapid and seamless. If you work with an agency like ours, it can be pretty much instantaneous, and it doesn't require a lot of resources to be pulled in. So there's nothing to stop anyone from getting stuck in and start experimenting with the channel.
That's right. Yeah. I'd love to work with you. So let me know. My team is great at helping you set things up. So we try to make it as easy as possible.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for your time, Drew. Greatly appreciated. Everything will be online soon, and we're going to stop things here.